Hello, my name is Katia Veleva and I'm here to talk to you about the Women in BIM Mentoring Scheme. Today we're going to have a look at our timeline, what we've been doing in the last year, and look at some of the lessons we learned along the way. Before we do that, I would like to just share a little bit about myself and how mentoring has been a very big part of my life for now over a decade. My professional background starts within architecture. I've dabbled in interior design, then architectural technology and digital construction. The one thing that remained consistent throughout my wandering and testing of the construction industry has been my commitment to personal development and mentoring as such. This photo over here is actually from my first day in Portsmouth, where I went to university. And this is where I got acquainted with an organization called Aim Higher. Unfortunately, Aim Higher doesn't exist anymore, but in the early 2000s, they would support pupils from around the country to pursue higher education. Aim Higher gave me my first mentoring training, and with them, I supported long-term pupils from the Portsmouth area, and I also designed and executed various workshops to help introduce the concept of higher education in schools. When I started my career, I worked as a personal tutor as well as actually designing and executing work experience programs in some of the architectural practices I worked. Following that, I started volunteering as a mentor at the Stephen Lawrence Trust and then Build by Us. My experience as a mentor in Build by Us was key because essentially the Women in BIM mentoring program has been modeled after Fluid from Build by Us. In my position on the core team of Women in BIM, I started fostering the idea of a mentoring program, which is what I'm here to talk to you about. And now recently, because this has been really exciting to me and I've really found something amazing for myself within mentoring and personal development, I've started pursuing a diploma in coaching, executive coaching and neuro-linguistic programming as well. And so what happened? Last year in November, I came up with a logo. The designers amongst you will know how powerful this can be, but it all started with a logo. Then I had a bit of a timeline. Now this timeline was ambitiously pointing at the start of March as start of mentoring, but eventually it actually started much later than that. And of course, there's a little thing called a pandemic happening right now, which definitely affected that, but also this was our very first time doing this, so it was taking it a minute to settle with us, really. And that was a good lesson to learn, because this tool, this timeline over here, I never actually maintained properly, and we really benefited if I did. And the main reason was because it was not done in a convenient way. Now after that, in January, we started pointing out at the different documents we had to put together so that we could launch the program. Handbook was top of this list because even though we wanted this to be a very flexible program where the mentors are picked very carefully and then we can trust them to run with it, we still wanted to give them a resource to go back to if they needed additional support. This handbook was heavily based on the Fluid handbook created by Build by Us. And it actually took us a minute to make it happen from January until May, but it was definitely a classic example of the 80-20 rule, where the majority of the book was really written in the first 3 days of January, and then until May we continued to tweak and refine a lot in it. It was an amazing learning process, the handbook itself. I'm giving us 3 textbooks over here as a learning experience from it. And one of the lessons that I really want to highlight is even back there in January, we were thinking how we are defining ourselves, and we wanted to recognize that intersectional approach to diversity is really important, but our resources and our organization is focusing on gender. And we're still supporting our allies that are addressing other aspects of inclusion, but our thing is gender. So we really wanted to approach it in a contemporary and educated way. So then who are we helping? Women? We didn't really feel that that was enough. We didn't feel that this was this educated and contemporary definition of gender. The next thing we explored was a definition that covered women, non-binary, and trans people. We talked quite a bit about this, and we really didn't feel it was inclusive enough. And so at that point, I started calling up all of my queer friends who are academics and activists, and Deborah showed up for us, who happens to have a bestseller that I have accessible immediately behind me. Deborah suggested that we say instead women and people from minority genders, and this really covers everyone we're trying to help in this case. Having this cleared out, we really delved into the book. We had multiple versions and revisions and final versions of them, and eventually our dear friends from Costello Parmar helped us create this final beautiful version of the handbook, which you can download from our website for free. And it is a great resource, not only because of the work we put in it, but because the list of references you have in the end. There's so much excellent information you can grab on from there. Having covered all of these, in February, we were ready to launch. We actually had a real life launch event for the program, with people actually coming up and sitting next to each other. Remember those good old times? It was really exciting. And after we launched, we really didn't know whether we were expecting 2 applications or 200 applications. And we started realizing that our selection process is really going to be defined by the number of couples of mentoring matches that we're aiming to create. And the applications were starting to stack up. And initially we were kind of thinking of maybe just very few couples, because then we can really make sure that these are the best mentors and we don't have much worries afterwards. But as the applications were building up, some of us really felt like we wanted to help as many people as possible, but thinking of matching everyone that we got started becoming too overwhelming, because this is a responsibility. We are essentially creating a professional relationship with inherent power imbalance. And especially when this is addressing gender, we know that this is a tricky situation, and if there are any problems, we need to be able to support these couples, and we have the resource for that. Eventually we started thinking and decided to commit to a process that's aiming to 10 to 15 couples. We ended up creating 20 couples because we just couldn't limit them. But that specific process worked in 3 stages. We had the first stage, which was dry selection. Then we interviewed people, and then we finalized the matches. The dry selection was essentially looking at the application forms, and from then trying to sift people out. And really we had very diverse applications coming in. There were people who really didn't have much to do with BIM. There were several applicants that really didn't have that much to do with the construction industry itself. We had applications where people had chosen to apply with just several words, and then others where people had written paragraphs to tell us about themselves and what they're aiming for. We also looked at location as a defining factor, because mentoring itself, even though it could be done digitally, as we've learned, so many things can be done digitally these days, it is really helpful for the mentor to be aware of the environment of the mentee and the legislation that relates to BIM and construction and so on. So location, we decided, was a key factor for us as well. But working through the application forms, we really started to see we could refine our questions much better to then allow us next time to crunch the data much quicker. We were aiming for about 45 people after that process, but we ended up with 70. Is what it is. And then we started looking at how we're going to interview people. It was really key to know that the same interviewers would have had conversations with both the mentor and the mentee that will eventually end up matching. So that was tricky to figure out how this will work, but we definitely needed more people to interview because there were quite a few applications. And so we came up with a concept of a panel of interviewers, and then we needed to come up with ways to split the applications into groups that have the most in common, so that each interview panelist could stay within that section. And then the interview panelists would meet and make the actual matches. Again, here we really understood that refining those application questions can help us so much. And then the final matching would be approved by the core team in the end. And so our interview panel consisted of Gergana Stajkova, who looked at all of the non-UK and non-USA applicants, Dr. Jenny Barrett, who looked at all of the UK architectural applicants, and myself, I just took care of everyone else. Of course, we had agreed a list of criteria. We were looking out for the listening skills, communication style, years of experience for everyone, and we really wanted to build a great understanding of the technical background of everyone who's been applying. We had to prioritize mentors to be interviewed because, of course, they're kind of the bigger experience that's entering in the relationship. We looked at the mentees that had more extensive experience, and we wanted to get to know them better because we felt that if you're just entering the workforce, almost anything would be helpful to learn, whereas mentees that have extensive experience, we wanted to really understand what they need. We had some common resources that we looked at, but here it was a really tough thing to understand that the interviewing is taking quite a long time, and we really had to make some sacrifices with that. Having our panel ready, we were now prepared for the 1st of April when our application closed. And it's a really good time to have a look at actually who applied. Some pie charts. Who doesn't like some pie charts? We had 51 mentor applicants. Amongst them, we had 10 male applicants and 2 who didn't identify gender. 15 directors applied to mentor. Predominantly people with architectural background were applying to be mentors. And we had 13 countries represented in our mentor applications. We had 65 mentee apply, and the really interesting thing with them was that among the applicants, we had 5 directors and 9 people who were already in very senior BIM positions, which just comes to prove that a mentor is really helpful in any stage of your career. We had 18 countries represented here in the cross-section between mentees and mentor applications. We had 23 countries represented. Very excitingly, we had 3 applications that arrived to us entirely in Spanish. Women in BIM prides ourselves with being an international organization, and to be honest, I was very embarrassed to be surprised that we had applications coming in a language different than English. And that was a really interesting lesson for us, and I took that to heart myself because English is not my first language either. So I really thought that we should do something with that. Spoiler alert, this comes out later. And now we had the applicants. We started off working on the actual selection process. Of course, we had a hefty spreadsheet with a lot of information in it. Then we plugged that into a Google map, which I really enjoyed doing, to actually see where people are, where the applicants are. I think on this map, the blue ones are mentors and the green ones are mentees, and it was brilliant to have a look at this. Of course, I like me a little bit of a manual analog method of choosing as well, because it's good to just get your hands in there. After that, we had a very intense interview process, and in the start of May, we could send the matches out, which was a really amazing experience. I found that actually very emotional. Of course, we had a template of the email that said, of course, welcome, congratulations, you're matched. This is your match, this is what you're supposed to do, these are your resources. And I was adamant to leave a couple of sentences out for each of our panelists to put in why they think this match will work. And writing those, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure that Gergana and Jenny will support me in that. It was so emotional to write these sentences out, and it felt really brilliant to send those out. We couldn't match everyone though, and we really didn't feel great calling people rejected, and we still wanted to figure out what we can do to support everyone, because there were truly great applicants amongst the people we couldn't match, because there are so many other parameters that we were working with here that even though they may have been a great mentor, that just wasn't the right match for them. First of all, we changed the term and we decided to start calling them unmatched mentoring applicants, or UMAs. And I personally like to picture them dressed in yellow and wielding a sword. So that helped a bit. And then during the interview process, actually speaking to one of the mentor applicants, she shared that she preferred group mentoring and group coaching. And this is where the idea came from, our pool resource of mentors. So we decided to first remember to pay attention to what they're saying. That was a lesson learned there. And then to try and dabble into group mentoring. We decided that we needed to look at BIM as a whole and just kind of career development first in these first series of events that were career coaching essentially. Then we looked at the technical application side of BIM in terms of softwares, and then BIM as processes and standards, and then another event that looked at culture and collaborative working as well, because BIM, as techy as it may seem to many people, really requires quite a lot of very good soft skills. Having made some decisions on that, our program had now split into having essentially two legs, one-on-one mentoring and group mentoring. In the following month, we started receiving our mentoring record sheets, which was really great to see, and we had an event with the UK BIM Alliance where we updated them on the program up until that point, which was really exciting and really gave us an opportunity to reflect on what we were doing. With the group mentoring, at this point we started meeting with the mentoring leaders for each one of those events and solidifying their commitment for group mentoring. And we decided to actually try and have one of the events in Spanish, which was very exciting and also quite nerve-wracking because none of our core team members actually speak Spanish. So following that, in July, for the one-on-one mentoring, that was a fairly quiet month because the mentoring was actually happening on the background. We started thinking about maybe having a catch-up event with all the one-on-one mentors to see how things are going for them. And we also started seeing the need to nudge mentees for certain things, and this really highlighted to us that we need a better reminder slash nudge system. An important lesson learned there. For the group mentoring, in the start of July, we solidified everything and we sent out the invite to every mentee that wasn't matched. We offered 4 events and we gave them an opportunity to choose 2 of them, trying to cover different time zones. So all the events were different times and we wanted to make sure that everyone could make it to at least one. And then on the 21st, we had our very first career coaching event. Many Zoom lessons were learned because we were working with sending people out in different rooms. We really had to get a hang of that. The career coaching was led by the amazing Elizabeth Kavanagh. She's someone with extensive coaching experience and very rich HR background. And it was, to me personally, I supported that event. It was such an amazing learning experience, watching her work with people throughout these 4 separate events and really massaging out of them what they truly want and what their dream career would be to make them happy and to really push their development forward. It was brilliant. This was the first out of 4 events and we tried to keep them with the same people. Sometimes we had to have catch-up sessions with some of them, but it was a really special set of events. This is a picture of the first one of them, and at that first one we had people from the UK, the US, we had someone from Kenya go in, we had someone from Egypt and even Malaysia, and for her it was 3 a.m. in the morning when we were doing this event and she decided to make the effort to actually be there, which was amazing. Continuously throughout the month we had series of feedbacks and nudges for the other events, and again we started thinking how we can make this system better for communication on the mentoring scheme. Following that, August came, and usually August is quite quiet, but not for us. We sent out an invite for all of our one-on-one mentors to come over for several catch-up events, and we kept receiving more mentoring record sheets, and it was really good to see how things were going there. With the group events, We had loads going on. We had many of the career coaching events still happening, and we also had a big problem with our email invites. We lost them, pretty much all of them, towards the end of the month, and it was quite nerve-wracking trying to get them back together. And this is a bit of a technical issue, but it can really impact the momentum of a program like that when you suddenly realize that you have no idea who's coming to this event. You have a couple of reference points from other softwares where you've done arrangements, but suddenly everything's gone. So we really have been thinking more seriously on how to make this more foolproof. And at the end of the month, we had our BIM resources event that focused on technical applications, and this was the version of it in English. So several lessons were learned this month. And this event was supposed to be led by Julia Kravetza, but unfortunately Julia couldn't make it this day at the very last moment, so I had to take over. And this is again another lesson learned, that we really need to have good backup. This was the event, and we really had a great time regardless. And then moving on, it was already September somehow, and in the start of September we had our mentor catch-ups, which were truly amazing. We focused on several questions with our mentors. We wanted to see what was going well, what were the challenges that they were facing, what they were aiming for, and eventually, after most of the event was gone, we wanted to see how this catch-up would actually influence their mentoring. We learned a lot from them. We truly did. Some of these things I'm not actually able to share, but we decided we could extend our communication with them and try and feed some of the handbook information periodically in a newsletter, as opposed to expect them to read it and refer to it more often. We saw that a lot of learning was happening, both technical and interpersonal skills were being developed. And the really lovely thing that we learned from the mentors in the end was that this experience made them feel like they could be more open with their mentees, which was truly amazing. Now, having seen who showed up for the catch-ups and having also seen the mentoring record sheets, we established that we had not had any communication from 5 mentoring couples. So this was an important lesson to learn, and we started to pursue them and to figure out what the problems were. And we had actually quite a few problems with communication, where emails stopped being relevant because people were being made redundant and so on. So this was a note to make, that we needed to get more than one ways to communicate with them. September was also busy for the group mentoring events. We had our very last career coaching, and as I said, these were truly special events, and one of our mentees actually wrote an article about her experience with them, and I would urge you to have a look. It was really, really lovely to see that she's genuinely benefited from it. And then in the middle of the month, we had our Spanish event as well. For that one, we had support from our wonderful regional lead from Barcelona, Maria Elena Plaquez, and we also had our mentor, Maria de los Angeles Capria from Chile. Maria has podcasts on BIM and is actually quite involved in BIM in Chile. And I was there for the event to provide technical support. I didn't understand what people were saying, but I could truly see that it was very engaged, and there were some real connections that happened during that event. And it's very exciting that we've managed to make that happen. And then later in the month, we had our standards event, so our group mentoring that was focusing on BIM standards and processes. And for that one, we had Nick Gatminia and Larissa Di Rosso leading it, and Vicky Reynolds was the support in that one. Also a really lovely event, a Q&A session to kind of explore these sort of things that are quite challenging sometimes to figure out and wrap our heads around. And that was September for our mentoring program. And this is actually not the 22nd today. For me, is the very 1st of October. And what we're planning for October for the one-on-one mentoring is to really give birth to an idea for a celebration event, which we're not sure how we're going to do now with restrictions raising, but we really want to we want to figure something out for a celebration event. And then on the group mentoring side, we're having the culture event in the end of the month. And this is going to be led by Emma Jackson and Simon Gallagher. And it's again going to be a Q&A session focusing on some difficult scenarios involving collaboration and office politics that the mentees may need some support for. Now, this has been what we've been doing so far, and I'm just going to go over the lessons we learned one more time. And these are in no particular order of importance, but just chronologically how we figured things out. As I said, keeping up a timeline tone is very, very important. Being ready to deal with more people is helpful. We need to refine our questions for our application forms, because the better the data we get, the quicker and more efficiently we can deal with it. We need to figure out a way to interview more people. We need to either increase our resource or come up with a more creative way of interviewing, to maybe request people to submit videos of themselves or something of the sort. Asking the mentors what they like doing and what they're able to do was actually really, really helpful, because it gave us a lot of ideas and really got us to use our resources in the best possible way. Plan reminders and nudges better. Just do better in that aspect. We learned many Zoom lessons. Haven't we all learned so many Zoom lessons recently? Again, better invite system, similar with the better reminders and nudges, just need to find something more efficient and more secure. And additionally, with the invite system, we need to find something that also keeps our information safer. We were using our Outlook calendars, but this just wasn't good enough. We can be braver with numbers, especially for the group mentoring events. With those, I was very aware and a little bit scared of expanding them more, because I didn't want to get more people than we can handle. So we never invited more people than we can handle. But the truth is, however many people you invite to a free event, you will never get more than half of them. That's a rule of thumb that I can say always works. So we can be braver with those numbers. Truly, the mentees reported that they were very happy that these were intimate events and they really benefited from them because they could engage, but we can handle more. We need to have backup mentors because everything happens. We learned a lot from the one-on-one mentors, and we're looking forward to learning even more towards the end of the one-on-one mentoring program. We need to get multiple types of contacts as well. Not little, but we're really planning to do better next time. It's been amazing being part of that. It's been my joy throughout this crazy time in the world, and I'm very grateful to be able to share that with you. Now, I believe we're going to move on to a live session where I will be there for real and I can answer some of your questions.